Oh. Okay, Mel. Do you know what the name you were given at birth was?
Yeah.
What was that?
Well, Melvin Roger Lidtka.
That's it. Just the way it was. Okay. And where were you born at?
Grinnell, Iowa, Cauchy County. February 7th, 1924.
Was that in a hospital?
In a house.
In a house?
Yeah.
Who was there? Do you know at the time?
I imagine my dad was.
Yeah.
My mother, and that's all I know.
Your dad delivered you?
Well, I don't know who. I guess a doctor was there. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember.
All right. Were you the firstborn of your family?
No. Third.
And how many brothers and sisters did you have?
One brother, one sister.
And so it's just the three of you.
Yeah.
How? Who is the brother?
Delmar. He just turned 80 this month.
And your sister?
Selma. And we just got back from seeing her.
So how many years apart were you guys spaced?
Let's see. I was 4 years from my sister and 6 years from my brother, younger.
Oh, okay. Did you have a nickname growing up?
Growing up, yeah.
What did they call you?
Well, depending on where.
At home?
At home,
Your family?
well,
Did they?
not in Iowa. I left there when I was 3.
Oh, okay.
Okay. My dad died.
Uh-huh. When you were 3?
Yeah.
What took him?
Tuberculosis.
Did they know how he caught it?
Yeah, he worked in the mines.
And you can get tuberculosis working in...
Well, yeah, you had the germ and then all that dampness down there.
Oh, yeah. What kind of mine was it?
Well, he worked in gold mines. He worked in Butte, Montana. He worked in High Sierras in California. He went all over working there.
And did he do that? Was that his career most of his life?
Yeah, well, he died young, you know,
How old was he when he passed?
in his 20s.
Wow. Wow. So how did your mom get on after that?
Terrible. She was in Salt Lake at the time, and she couldn't even go to the funeral. Couldn't even go back to Iowa.
He had gone out to work away from home for a while?
Well, I don't know exactly. I know he died in Iowa, and she was in Salt Lake. And then she couldn't afford to keep us, so we all went in the orphanage. My
Really?
brother, sister, and myself.
And
I don't know how long. We was there quite a while.
but your mom reclaimed you?
She got married finally, and I got a stepdad.
And how old were you about that time?
Oh, probably 5. I don't know.
So just a couple of years.
Yeah, yeah.
And then did she do all right after that?
Yeah, well, we went through the bad depression.
Yeah.
That was in the third.
What line of work was your stepfather in?
He was an accountant. He went to the University of Utah.
Uh-huh.
But during the depression, he couldn't get a job. In fact, he was on the WPA for a while. And then in 1936, we went to San Francisco
Uh-huh.
and lived there for a number of years.
He got a job as an accountant again?
Not then.
No.
He did everything, you know.
Odd
Sold
job.
Raleigh products, door to door, car polish. It was tough. We
Raleigh
couldn't get a
product-
job.
Raleigh products are car?
Raleigh products is something like what are these things that have all these products they sell, you know, they still have now.
Is it like food items or?
No, all kinds of cleaners and
Oh, okay. Soaps and detergents and
yeah,
stuff?
stuff like that. Yeah, yeah.
They did that for a while and...
Then finally he got back into business and like doing CPA work.
Uh-huh. And what was his name?
Henry Russell. Now you're coming to nicknames.
No, we're getting to the nickname territory.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had a stepbrother. We really got along fabulous.
You did?
Yeah, yeah. And His name was Eugene Russell, and my name was Melvin Russell then. And one day we went to the beach, and I got all sunburned, and he said, "How you doing, Pinky?" And they called me Pinky, so that's your nickname.
And you were what, 10 then, or?
Yeah, well, yeah, that and younger, yeah.
So how many stepbrothers and sisters did you
Just
have?
one.
Just Eugene, and he was what, older or younger than you?
Oh, 1 year.
1 year older?
Yeah.
But he was a good friend.
Oh, yeah.
Got along well, huh?
Yeah.
And did anybody at school ever call you any nicknames?
Yeah, well, that Pinky was it.
Pinky was it. Your
Yeah,
brother
yeah,
brought that to
well,
school and passed it
Yeah,
around? And
yeah, up till later years.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Do you remember hearing your grandparents describe their lives?
Well, I remember the grandparents pretty well, but as far as describing them,
They didn't talk about much what they did.
no. My grandmother her name was Arnston, and the missionaries got to the family, and they was very poor. In fact, she lived on a farm, and she'd stand in cow manure to get her feet warm. It was so bad.
Really?
Yeah.
Just in the winter.
Yeah, in the winter, yeah. But I mean, that just shows you how tough
Yeah.
it was over there. And then the missionaries come and she came over.
That was on your father's side?
Mother's side.
Your mother's side. And where did they live?
Well, they lived in Norway, and then they moved to Salt Lake.
Oh, really?
And later to San Francisco, yeah.
They did they move to? Were they married when they came to America?
Yeah. And then grandfather was in Salt Lake, and I was just a small boy, and he got hit by the car and killed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And your other grandparents?
The other grandfather died, and I don't even remember him. He fell in a well.
Wow.
And I don't remember any on the other side.
Your grandmother?
Grandfather. On my father's side.
Uh-huh.
And they weren't LDS. My step-grandfather and
Oh, yeah.
grandmother,
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
different.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. They had a house in Salt Lake, and we moved in it later. So. And she died. The grandmother died. And
From what?
I don't know.
She.
I don't remember.
Pretty young.
Probably 50s.
Uh huh.
I don't know, 50s or 60s. I don't know.
But you remember the grandfather.
I remember them both. My grandfather lived with us. Yeah. He worked for 50 years on the Salt Lake Tribune Telegram. He was a proofreader, and he was a linotype operator and stuff like that.
Did he do that all through the Depression? Was he able to keep his job there?
Yeah.
So he was okay.
And I don't know where he went to college. He may have went to the University of Utah. My stepbrother graduated from the University of Utah. He was an engineer, and my stepdad, both University of Utah.
When you were a kid at home, do you remember your parents talking about your stepfather and your mother talking about politics?
Yeah.
What kind of things did they have to say?
Democrat. They was Democrats. They loved. All I remember all through my youth was President Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That's the only one that I ever knew was president, because he was president for 12 years. Also, Joe Louis was the champion for all my youth. He held that championship till 1942 or something. So that was, but.
So they were big on FDR.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And they talked about him a lot.
Yeah, but a lot of people were during the Depression, because they blamed everything on the Republicans, all the tough times. So that's it. Yeah, it was tough times, really tough.
So you must remember the Depression really well.
Oh,
You
yeah.
were 8
Yeah.
when it hit?
Yeah.
About 8?
Yeah,
And-
well, the crash was in 29, and so I was only 4 when the crash
Okay,
hit.
okay, yeah.
But it was from then on up to, almost the war, it's years.
Do you, so you don't remember much before that. In fact, probably the first things you remember was just what the
Yeah,
Depression was
yeah.
like for you.
But the kids don't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
We do,
So it probably didn't seem really different. It
Yeah.
probably for you,
Yeah.
when things started to turn around, you must have.
well, the war came and stuff, and then I went in the Navy and stuff. But it was tough, though, I know.
What sticks out in your mind when you think back of that? What images, real vivid images, come back to you about what?
You
life
mean
was
about tough times?
like? About tough times? What do you think?
Okay. I remember my mother was usually really worried. We had a hot water tank in the kitchen, and they had a wire stretched from that to the meter, electric meter. And somehow that short-circuited the meter, and it wouldn't turn so fast. And my stepdad hooked that up. And she used to worry that they'd come and catch her, and and that was kind of cheating, and I remember that. And I remember they'd get a whole bunch of these nickel hamburgers on some Saturday nights, and on Sunday mornings I'd heat this little hamburger. Oh man, I just loved those.
Yeah.
That was a big treat. Super little hamburger.
Was that a particular restaurant that did that? Do you remember? Or?
Yeah, I think it's called D's in Salt Lake.
Oh, D's, and they still have D's down there.
Yeah.
Was there a chore that you really hated as a child?
Not necessarily. Well, we took turns doing dishes, and as kids we used to argue who's going to wipe and who's going to wash.
Uh-huh.
When I was probably 6 years old, I went down the basement and got a big bucket of coal. I guess I was kind of showing off as a kid. And there evidently was a big piece on the top, and it fell over and smashed my toe. And I remember a red line going up my leg, and I got poisoning.
From the coal, or?
Yeah, from infection, poisoning, blood poisoning.
Really?
And I remember him wrapping me in a blanket and rushing me to the hospital and all kinds of stuff like that. And I was very ill at that. And then another time, we was visiting the country. I don't know if I should tell this on tape. But they had a big gully. And this little kid told me it was good water to drink, and I drank it. And I got typhoid fever.
Really?
And then I remember being so sick, and my mother praying over me, and oh man, it was really something. How I survived that, I don't know.
Were you sick for weeks with that?
For a long time, I don't know.
Yeah. Wow. What kind of temperament did your mom have?
Well, she was nice.
Was she very outgoing, or is she a little more
Oh,
introverted?
she was introverted, but she was real nice.
Uh-huh.
She could say some stunning things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your dad, or your stepfather, what kind of temperament did he have?
Well, he had a high temperature.
Yeah.
Temperament, I mean. Yeah. He was.
Short fuse?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I remember him driving a car, and he'd holler, at people. One time somebody got even with him. They put sugar in the gas tank and ruined the motor because of that. He had a short fuse.
Yeah.
But being a stepfather myself, I can relate a little bit.
Did they have a sense of humor? You
All I
remember?
remember, yeah, I guess, but all I can remember is just tough times.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, your kids seem to think that you have a pretty big sense of humor. What do you attribute that to?
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea. Just living.
Wasn't your folks, huh?
No.
Something you picked up? All right. What do you consider as the most important invention that you ever saw come about during your lifetime?
Most. Uh, there's so many of them you can't.
Well, what's one that you thought had really made a big change?
Computers is terrific, you know.
Yeah.
Astrology, since Joseph Smith's time, since
Yeah.
the 1830s. Now we know all about the galaxies.
Mm-hmm.
Billions and billions of galaxies. There's no end to it.
Yeah.
That's really something. The jet plane is fantastic.
Do you remember the first time you saw a jet fly?
No, I don't remember when it was. When I first saw it, I remember a friend of mine that was a pilot in the war talking about at the end of the war in Germany that he said he was flying along and here comes his little fighter. Just passed him out. It was the first time he saw a jet plane. Just amazing. In World War II, airplanes flew probably 300 miles an hour. You know, fighters went 350. The fastest one that came out was a P-38. They called it a Lightning. It could do over 400 in a dive. And incidentally, in the war, I flew in a fighter for the first airplane flight. It was called a Bullfighter. It was an English plane.
I've heard of them.
And we was in Hollandia, New Guinea, and three of us went over the air base, and we talked to the pilot, and we said, how about taking us up? And he said, I'll take one of you. And we odd-manned, and I won. And I got the scare and thrill of my lifetime.
You like that?
Well, he went up, he didn't tell me what he's doing. And a bullfighter has rockets, and it has machine guns. And then it has I was standing on a trap door behind the pilot, and we went up and flew, and I looked down at my ship. It looked like a little cigar, and flew all around, and all at once that guy went and do a dive. He didn't say a word, and man, there was a rowboat, and they opened up with the machine guns on that rowboat. It was a practice, and missed it a mile, you know. And then we went up and flew around again, and this time he opened up with rockets, and he hit it. And man, that was really something. And then he flew around, and then he went to land, and went up over some palm trees, and he grabbed a knob. It looked like it said emergency on it. It was a red knob. And that plane started jerking around, and I thought we was going to crash. And then he flew around and came in and landed. And I knew after that he was just doing that to scare me. What it was a Australian pilot in a English plane.
Uh-huh.
And I bet he's teach a bloody yoink to ask for a ride.
Yeah, I'll give you a ride. Something to remember, huh?
I'll tell you something else about that. Is this last year I got a letter from a man that says that through the computers he's searched all over the United States for a Melvin Lidtka. And I was the only Melvin Lidtka in the United States, and it was a guy I sailed with. I was a gunner in the war. And this guy was a good buddy. He was real tough, but he was a good looking. Oh, you can't believe it. But anyway, he drew on my gun shield, he drew a big moon, big round moon, yellow moon with a black panther jumping through it. And anyway, I called him up on the phone and answered that. And then he sent me a letter and asking me, he remembered that, and he drew a picture of it. I got it here. And also, we went to a base in a place called Numfor, New Guinea. And from there they had these B-25s. There was bombers with big tails, bigger than this room, twin tails, and on this air base they had a emblem over this big arch, and it says the Jolly Rogers bomber group, and in the middle they had its black skull white skull on black backgrounds for their insignia.
Uh-huh.
And they'd go over Japan and bomb it. We'd see them go out and come back later, Sometimes there'd be a plane missing. But anyway, we went to this air base, and this guy's name is Wes Blankenship. And he went to the captain of this airplane. He says, how'd you like to have that skull and painted on your tail? And he says, boy, that'd be great. Well, the airplane's big, and they got a forklift, and a few guys to help him. They lifted him up there, and he painted that on the tails. And the next day, the commander of the airbase came over to our ship, and he wanted to know who Wes Blankenship was. They got him. He says, I'm him. He said, did you paint that on those tails? He says, yeah. He says, that's defacing government property. He said, well, the captain said I could. He says, well, it's against the law. You can't do that. And Wes says, well, what are we going to do about it? He said, well, I got 6 more airplanes I want you to paint on them. So even, I've seen old newsreels, and you see those bombers with those, but he did it. And a funny thing is, last week, we went to California, and my wife and I stayed with that guy. And this guy was real handsome. Now he's an old man. I wouldn't have known him. Bald-headed, completely bald. But the funny thing about that guy I seen him. I went to California a couple of months ago alone.
Uh-huh.
But the funny thing about him is he's doing genealogy. And he's went way back on 1200 and one line, and 1600 on another line. And it's just a hobby. And the guy is really sharp. And
he's not LDS.
no. Before when I first heard him, I got him a Book of Mormon, and he wasn't interested. He says, I go to that Mormon church over here, and they help me with genealogy. They're real nice people, but I wouldn't be interested. And then I said, I want you to read this Book of Mormon. And he said, no, I really didn't care. And then when I was about to leave, I gave him one. And he says, you want it back? I said, no. I said, I just want you to read it. So this time, when my wife went and visited him, I kind of bore my testimony. And I said, there's no accident you found me. And then I gave a talk, a real nice poem I gave in the church about missionary work. And then, believe it or not, the guy, I'll have to show you the letter I got from him. Sent me pictures, had him, of the war, and him on his gun shooting it in Okinawa, in actual combat and all. He got on another ship after I left him. But we went all over the world. One time we took a trip from San Francisco clear under Australia to the other side of Australia, which is Perth or Fremantle. And that one run alone is about probably 10,000 miles.
Wow.
From there we went up to the Bay of Bengal, to below India. It's called Colombo, Ceylon. Now it's called Sri Lanka. And from there I don't remember where we got a convoy. We got a whole big convoy to go up to the Ganges River. And we laid there for over 40 days before we go up the Ganges to Calcutta. It's way inland, Calcutta, to unload. And we took airplanes and stuff. And yeah, it was. But
Well,
that was.
Was that all during the war?
Yeah, World War II.
Well, why were you making these long trips then? I mean, it seems like you'd want to stay near the battlefront.
No, well, we're delivering war stuff.
Oh, so your ship.
Yeah.
What kind of ship was it?
Liberty ships.
So that's like a smaller gunship?
It's a regular cargo ship.
Oh, it's a cargo ship, but it had guns on it.
It had 8 20 millimeters to protect them, you know.
Oh, okay.
And then it had a 3-inch 50 in the bow and a 3-inch 50 in the stern, and then a big 5-inch 38 on the stern.
So that's a lot of guns for a cargo
Well,
ship.
you had to protect these ships, and they had Navy gunners, and that's what I was. That's their own 20 millimeter.
So how many men did it take to operate that gun?
Just one to operate it, but then sometimes we took troops and we'd use those for loaders. They have a cartridge about that big around as a magazine. It's a 20 millimeter shell is about that long. And it holds 60 in each one of those things. So when you're shooting and you've fired them all, then you have to have someone snap that off and put another one on.
So you have a guy who supports you.
Yeah,
you fired
if we have troops or somebody to do it, otherwise you have to do it yourself.
Ah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's an anti-aircraft gun.
Yeah.
Basically.
Every third bullet is a tracer. What that means is you can shoot like in an airplane, and you can use those tracers just to follow it up to the plane. You can see where you're shooting.
Did you get attacked ever?
Well, we had some skirmishes. Not bad. My buddy, he really got it. Yeah.
On another ship?
Yeah, I was in on some invasions in the Philippines and stuff.
But you never really got attacked directly?
No. Had Japs flying over and stuff, but not too bad.
So you really didn't even have an opportunity to shoot any of the planes down?
Oh, no, I didn't shoot any of them.
Better that way, I guess.
Well, I was... we was in on a lot of stuff. And, personally, I didn't shoot at any Japanese aircraft. We got radio reports where they sunk ships in back of us, in front of us, and all through the war. And
you just got lucky.
Oh yeah, I was lucky. It was rough.
Let me ask you one more question, and we'll knock off.
Okay.
What did you like to read as a child?
No.
Not too much?
No.
What was the first book you ever remember reading? Ever?
Complete?
Yeah, what's the first book that you ever remember reading?
Oh, probably Steinbeck novels.
And did you like those?
Yeah.
Was that maybe a point where you decided maybe there's some books I'd like to read?
Yeah.
What titles do you remember reading that you really enjoyed from Steinbeck?
Well, I read A Mice and Men, and what was that one about the war? Something, I think it's called The Moon is Down, or something like that. And, what were some of the others?
Did you read The Pearl? Didn't he write The Pearl?
Yeah, I've read that, but that was just short things.
Short
I read a whole bunch of those short ones. Yeah, he wrote The Pearl. And a bunch of them. But that's been 50 years since I read those. You know, you're talking about the first.
Those are the first ones.
Yeah.
Is there a book that you remember reading during your lifetime that you would say is your favorite book, or one of maybe your favorite book?
Well, in relation to my life, I like Mr. Roberts.
Who wrote that?
I don't know who wrote it.
That you like that?
Yeah, it's about this.
What was it about?
It's about a ship and this crazy captain and the crew and how they revolted and all kinds of stuff. about the World War II. I enjoyed that. And I've read a lot of church novels and books, and, you know.
That you've enjoyed.
Oh yeah, Cleon Skousen, the first 2,000 years, the second and the third. A whole bunch of church stuff.
And did you read the Work in the Glory series?
No.
No, I haven't read that.
I haven't got to it. I mean, I don't know.
Do you read a lot now?
Well, quite a bit. I don't sleep good, so I'll get up at 4 or 5 in the morning and read.
What are you reading right now?
Well, last night I read an old Improvement Era.
Huh?
No, well, what is that? These little ones, Relief Society book.
The old Release Society magazine.
Yeah, those little
You have some of the old ones, huh?
Yeah, I just went digging in the library and got one out and read it.
All right, great.